April 1950. The Cold War deepens, a silent conflict raging between superpowers. A modified PB-4Y2 privateer, christened the Turbulent Turtle, runs off a runway in Wiesbaden, West Germany, its belly packed with advanced electronic surveillance equipment. Its mission is to penetrate the Iron Curtain, the impenetrable barrier surrounding the Soviet Union, and gather critical electronic and signals intelligence. The crew, handpicked for their skill and courage, take off on this journey into hostile airspace, their aircraft a ghost in the sky, unseen and unheard. Emerging from the legacy of the B-24 Liberator and tailored to meet the Navy's stringent needs, this was no ordinary plane. The Turbulent Turtle's fuselage had been lengthened to house cutting-edge electronic countermeasures and radar antennas, turning it into a flying fortress armed with a dozen 50-caliber machine guns. As the Turbulent Turtle approached the coast of Liepāja, Latvia, the gentle hum of its engines was suddenly overpowered by the menacing roar of Soviet La-11 fighters. With Soviet fighters bearing down on them, the crew of the Turbulent Turtle found themselves in a desperate fight for survival, their intelligence mission quickly becoming a secondary concern. The B-24 Liberator, a heavy bomber with 4 engines, saw extensive use by the United States Army Air Forces during World War II. It holds the distinction of being the most produced American military aircraft of its time, with over 18,000 units rolling off the assembly line. This bomber was known for its unique twin-tail design and a high-mounted Davis wing, which gave it impressive range and speed. Its sizable bomb bay could carry approximately 8,000 pounds of ordnance, making it ideal for strategic bombing missions. The B-24's power came from 4 Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engines, propelling it to speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour and allowing it to cover distances greater than 2,000 miles. The aircraft's crew of 10 included pilots, bombardiers, gunners, and navigators, all working in unison to achieve their mission goals. The B-24 played a pivotal role in the bombing campaigns targeting Axis forces across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific Theater. The B-24's fame came from its ability to handle a variety of missions, ranging from long-range strategic bombing to anti-submarine patrols and airborne supply drops. Despite its adaptability and success, it was notorious for being tough to fly, earning the grim nickname, the Flying Coffin, from some of its crews. Yet, its usefulness was undeniable, prompting the United States Navy to adapt it for their purposes by tweaking the airframe. The initial batch for the Navy, known as PB-4Y1 Liberators, included only minor naval modifications. Other experimental versions featured components like the tail from a Douglas B-23 Dragon, a vertical fin from a C-54 transport, and even a ball turret replacing the usual nose turret. Despite these changes, the Navy still wanted more and requested a completely navalized design from Consolidated Aircraft. This led to the creation of the PB-4Y2 privateer, delivered to the Navy in 1943 for specialized long-range patrols and bombing missions. While similar to the Liberator, the privateer was specifically modified for naval duties. One major change was the lengthening of the fuselage to accommodate a dedicated station for the flight engineer, who managed the central systems of the aircraft. Additionally, the navigator's astrodome was relocated from the upper nose to a spot behind the first dorsal gun turret. The radar antennas and electronic countermeasure communication equipment were strategically placed throughout the fuselage, sticking out in several areas. Notably, the aircraft featured the innovative retractable ANAPS-2 radome positioned behind the nose wheel. Perhaps the most striking difference was the privateer's unique vertical stabilizer, moving away from the Liberator's standard twin-tail design. Derived from the USAAF prototype, the B-24N, the privateer featured a single tail that improved stability and maneuverability at the medium altitudes typically used in naval operations. The privateer was heavily armed with 12.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, offering a powerful and precise defensive setup. Unlike the Liberator, it omitted the ventral turret to save weight. These M2 machine guns were strategically positioned to defend against attacks from any direction, ensuring no enemy threat could approach unchallenged. Without the need for turbochargers, since it wasn't designed for high-altitude flying, the privateer was agile and deadly in the air. Designed to meet the rigorous demands of maritime missions, the aircraft also addressed the issue of pilot fatigue during long patrols by including an extra seat for a flight engineer. This thoughtful adaptation made it well-suited for the exhaustive nature of naval operations. The privateer made its operational debut in late 1943, but its significant impact came in the final months of 1944. Patrol bomber squadrons 118 and 119 were the first to receive the new aircraft. Although most of the 739 privateers were delivered to the U.S. Navy after the war in Europe ended, several squadrons saw action in the Pacific Theater starting on January 6, 1945. These units received high praise for their performance. The privateers excelled in a variety of roles such as surveillance, search and rescue, electronic countermeasures, and communication relays in the Marianas. Offensive operations commenced in March 1945, with Patrol Bomber Squadron 119 launching missions from Clark Field in the Philippines. They targeted the Chinese coasts and northern Okinawa, demonstrating the privateers' versatility and effectiveness in combat. Privateers were busy with military missions in the Gulf of Tonkin and the airspace above French Indochina before Japan surrendered. When it came to the intense battle for the volcanic island of Iwo Jima, Navy privateers didn't hold back, putting in 16-hour shifts. These missions had them searching for enemy radar installations, radio and navigational stations, troop transports, and various land and sea targets. They also kept tabs on weather conditions, enemy locations, and operations, located downed airmen over the sea, and coordinated search and rescue missions. As if that wasn't enough, these Navy privateers provided crucial cover for Army Air Force's B-29 bombers flying over mainland Japan. Besides their combat roles, the Navy also used the PB-4Y2 privateers as typhoon and hurricane hunters during the final months of the war against Japan. Tracking typhoons sometimes proved more perilous than flying over combat zones. This was tragically evident with Bunos 59415 and 59716, both lost during hurricane hunting missions. The first aircraft encountered mechanical failure while examining a Category 1 typhoon near Bataan Island, close to the Philippines. The second was lost on December 16, 1953, during a reconnaissance mission for Super Typhoon Doris near the small island of Agrihan, north of Guam. No trace of the crew or wreckage was ever found. Despite their older technology, the Navy still effectively used the privateers during the Korean War. When North Korean Communist forces invaded South Korea in June 1950, the Navy sent out PB-4Y2 privateers for patrol missions to spot any Chinese or North Korean seaborne infiltrators. The PB-4Y2s soared through the night on audacious Firefly missions. Their engines thundered as they deployed parachute flares, casting an eerie glow over the dangerous landscape below. This was to aid United Nations troops locked in fierce nocturnal combat, or to give them a visual edge when surrounded by communist forces. Each flare ignited the night sky, inviting enemy fire as the pilots bravely navigated the mayhem to spot and intercept North Korean and Chinese seaborne infiltrators. Yet, the courage of these privateers wasn't confined to the Korean peninsula. They patrolled the icy waters near the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China, acting as the front line of intelligence gathering. With their wings cutting through hostile airspace, these Navy aircraft undertook crucial signals intelligence, or SIGINT, missions. Such operations demanded the PB-4Y2s to venture close to or even into enemy territory to intercept radar signals or radio communications. The risks were immense, but the potential rewards for intelligence were just as significant. The back-and-forth chatter between interceptor controllers and pilots was a goldmine for intelligence analysts. The simplest method to gather this intel was to incite the enemy's air defenses to scramble their interceptors. On April 8, 1950, Soviet La-11 fighters unleashed a torrent of bullets on a PB-4Y2 privateer known as the Turbulent Turtle. This aircraft, part of Patrol Squadron 26, or VP-26, met a tragic end off the coast of Liepāja, Latvia, when enemy fire ripped through its fuselage. The incident, where the Soviet Union shot down an American plane, reignited tensions between these two powerful nations. The Soviets alleged the plane entered Soviet airspace, penetrating 21 kilometers. Soviet fighters launched from a nearby base and signaled the American plane to follow and land. The American aircraft ignored these commands and fired upon the Soviet jets. Consequently, a Soviet fighter returned fire, prompting the American plane to veer towards the sea and vanish. The crew of the privateer was never found again. In the early Cold War days, privateers were also eyed for nuclear weapon delivery. Some PB-4Y2s were modified to carry second-generation atomic bombs, but they never conducted test missions during their service. Additionally, over 40 privateers were transferred to the Nationalist Chinese Air Force under Chiang Kai-shek for their assistance.